The following is a City Bear Press production.
Hi, folks. This is Andy McCabe, and today's guest is Dr. Jackie Marquette, the author of the Marquette Strength and Career Index. She's going to tell you about her chapter in our book, Autism Essentials. And Jackie has worked on this for a number of years. And just as a brief introduction, my wife took it last night, and it was off the chart neat in terms of identifying what my wife likes to do in terms of her job, and also lots of things about her personally in terms of habits and so forth. So with that, welcome, Dr. Jackie Marquette.
Well, thank you for having me on. Yes, I wrote a chapter for you in your book. Thank you for inviting me to write that chapter.
Sure.
And it was focused on transition and teens going off to college. And it all started, let me just give you a very brief. Sure. I have an autistic son. He's now 44 years old. So I've been at this for a long time. I taught students. I found jobs in school districts as a supervisor for students, and I've researched. So, but when I was going through with my son, it just hit me over the head like a brick when my other two sons went off to college. And Trent was home, and we went through some abrupt changes in our family. He was sitting there on the couch, and I thought, this, what are other people experiencing? And I knew that I had to get things together, as most people out there know that now. And what I did, I didn't look at what is his cognitive ability, what is his IQ. I didn't look at how well he could be independent. I looked at what his strengths were, but I have redefined strengths, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I looked at his interests, and I look at, well, what can he do? If he's in the right environment, what can he do? Well, that led to all the doors opening. That led to he had 2 jobs that lasted for 15 years. It led to me being able to see that he had an interest in art. It led to moving on from there. Well, if he likes art, can anybody buy it? It led to opening doors to applying for the Kentucky Arts Council, to going to art shows. We've been running an art business for him for 20 years, and he has won many international awards and national awards. And he was just written up in a chapter in a book recently with other autistic artists it's called The COVID Canvas, written by Dr. Rosa Martinez. And, I can truly say that because I found his interests and he found them, or I helped him find them, it has literally saved his life, especially through this pandemic. So that's not what your chapter was. The chapter was before the pandemic, but that's just kind of a brief overview of what I have been doing, and which led to me putting down and doing research on not just jobs, but on what strengths are, and how do you go from there to see how you can use your strengths.
So, Jackie, tell our listeners a little bit about the test, the 4 areas that it evaluates, and then what they get as a report as a result of doing this, because most folks on the spectrum are expected at age 14 to have a transition plan, and the transition plans are woefully lacking. But if folks would use the Marquette Strength and Career Index, the transition plan that they could realize will change their lives. So tell us about the 4 parts of your test and how it makes a difference.
Okay. It does impact people. It impacts them greatly, because when the individual who is capable of taking the tests independently, or his or her caregiver or teacher or assistant that can assist them, who know and understand them, it makes a big difference. But before I get to that, I would like to give you the assessment is based on my definition of strengths, which is different than what is out there now. We like schools. I think the reason schools are I don't want to say that they're failing, but they have so much to do, is that they look at cognitive, intellectual, and they look at independence. And if the student isn't able to be cognitive, intellectual, can't go to college, they assume that they could get training. Or if that's not the case, and they rely too much on other people in the environment, they're not really they're not chosen for job development. So that's where we go wrong. Well, the definition that I have of strengths is, it is anything that you are good at doing, or you have the potential to be good, or you have a strong interest in something. So that's a very wide open, number one part of I have 4. That's number one. So it could include something like math or science. But if you rely on an environment to understand your needs, and you're able to do a routine task, like at, let's just say at Walmart, Super Walmart, or it could be at Lowe's, something like that. You could do that well. You could do that well if you knew that you were good at doing a structured type task. Number 2 is the strength is you are energized when using your strengths. That means it's something that makes you feel good and you want to keep doing it. So when you have a job that makes you feel that way, you're going to be more successful in that job. And number 3, the strength, it benefits you in some way. Like even if it's not a job and it's a hobby, it makes you feel good. You're learning how to play an instrument, or you're doing art, or another way is personal preferences, which is part of the assessment. Is you do well in the environment that is calming and very structured. Then you can do your work. You can do what you're hired to do. And then lastly, the strength benefits your well-being. And it offers something greater than yourself to the workplace, the community, or your family. So I look at strengths in this broad approach rather than these boxes of cognitive, intellectual, or you must be independent and, be able to do it all by yourself. So the whole assessment is set up on that definition, my definition of strengths. And you asked about the sections of it. The first section is, it isn't cognitive, because we have a lot of people out there with intellectual cognitive abilities. So the questions are asked. Let me just see if I can find one real quick. Like the questions they're scenario based. So it's not that you have to, you have to define yourself. Well, I don't make good enough grades, or I don't do this or that. They're like, one is you have a good sense of direction. For example, you can read maps or use navigational tools. Well, that just because that might be an interest of yours, there's no telling what you could look up and do research that, would show that as a strength and a career. But the good thing about this assessment, that if that was one of your, that sounds like me, that would give you a list of careers to start exploring. So if you check that off.
If I may interrupt for a moment, this test can be taken either by the person, the adult, the child, or with assistance. And about how long would you say it takes to take the test?
Well, you don't have to take it all at once if you get tired and it's too overwhelming. But I would say about an hour or less. Okay. For someone who's independent and can, read and go through it by themselves, but
And-
someone who, is a little bit more dependent and needs some explanations or something, you can take longer.
And the thing that I like, well, there's a great deal I like about it, but one of the things that I want to mention for parents and also for teachers, and as well as the adult or the student, is that they come away with a 10 to 15 page report that tells them about themselves, that is designed just for them. It's not designed for anybody else but just them. And the power I see with this, Jackie, is that as a transition plan, it's just a natural. And we have thousands and thousands of kids out there on the spectrum who are getting nothing in their transition plan. And instead, they're spending millions of dollars with no goal in mind. We're working with him to become a musician or a carpenter or an artist like your son or whatever. So right now we're spending all this money and with no goal in mind. And there's a saying that is that no wind favors the sailor without a destined port. What Jackie Marquette has done, folks, is she's helped these adults and children to find a destined port, and that can give them a life as it has given her son, Trent. Jackie, we've run out of time, but what I'm going to include in this podcast is a link to the book, The Autism Essentials, where they can read about your chapter and learn about you and what you do, and also a link to your email. So I want to thank you for being with us. You gave us the information we need, and I'm looking forward to continuing our work together. You're doing a great job.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. Thank you, Jackie.
All right. Bye-bye.
For more information about City Bear Press publications, visit citybearpress.com.